Willing hands, we throw the torch, be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
Thank you very much, Rod. And with that, I'll ask you to say grace, please. It's been at our meetings, virtually every one of them, for the last, 16, almost 20 weeks, I think, Golston, almost right at the beginning of the pandemic.
Yeah, almost.
Yeah, and it was Denise, the president in the Lakeshore Club, that Rex called me and said, listen, since Golston lives in the Westmount area, better that she should be attending our meetings than the ones out in the West Island. And she's been doing it religiously ever since. So I'm very proud today to be able to induct Golston as a member of Rotary Westmount. Golston, the Rotary Club of Westmount has accepted you as a person of good character and high ethical standards, a person who has the heart of service. When we join Rotary, we become part of something bigger than ourselves. Beyond reaching our own lives and the lives of our family members, the relationships we build foster understanding across communities and cultures around the globe. You're beginning a great adventure in leadership, in friendship, and in service to your community and your fellow man. Membership in Rotary is an honor and a privilege, and with privilege comes obligations. You've been invited to join Rotary, but it will be through your own actions that you become a Rotarian. We encourage you to learn all you can about Rotary and to actively participate in the activities of the club, including attending weekly meetings, our social events, and our service projects. Rotary is like everything else. You get out of it what you put into it. So always remember Rotary's mottos: service above self, and he profits most who serves best. As your sponsor, I extend the hand of friendship and invite you to become a part of a worldwide organization dedicated to encouraging and fostering the ideal of service as a basis of worthy enterprise. Rotary is not a political organization, but all Rotarians are vitally concerned with everything pertaining to good citizenship and the election of good men and women to public office. Excuse me. Rotary is not a religious organization, but it is built on those eternal principles that have served as the moral compass for people throughout the ages. May you be stimulated by the friendship you find here, and may we, in return, know you to be an added source of strength to our club. I would ask everybody in the club now to unmute yourselves and join me in formally welcoming Golston Emuler as a member of the Rotary Club of Westmount.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Welcome.
Welcome.
There you go, Golston.
To all Rotarians, I encourage you to offer your friendship and helping hand to make Golston's membership useful and happy. To that effect, I would ask each and every one of you to reach out to Golston by phone or by email. Don't everybody do it this afternoon. She's busy. But over the next few weeks, let's send an updated club roster to her, and I'll send an updated club roster to everybody else, so you'll have her number and her email, and let's welcome her as best we can in this time of isolation and distancing. Golston, if you would like to say anything, now's the time.
I'm really honored and to be part of this community Rotary Club. Thank you, and special thanks to Jim, to you. I know it's not easy in this pandemic time over the wires doing such things. I'm really looking forward to be part of this club and to be a valuable member. As you said, you get best what you give, so I'm ready to give, and that's why I decided to be part of Rotary, because of it is what it is doing to the society. So and the friendship I saw during this weeks, Westmount is special. That's what I understand from Dennis as well. This is one of the best clubs I see. So hope to see you face to face in the future together, and ready to be part of your activities and work together with you. Thank you so much.
Welcome to the zoo.
Welcome.
Excellent. Oh, I feel better already. Now I'm going to introduce our guest speaker. If you like, Heather, you can mute everybody but Linda and myself, because I see a lot of things popping up on the screen here, which would suggest that we're getting some noise coming in. Brigadier General Linda Colwell will be speaking to us today about the military in Canadian society. As a member of the Canadian Armed Forces, Brigadier General retired, Linda Colwell served on bases and wings across Canada, at National Defence Headquarters, and on deployments with the United Nations and the multinational force and observers in the Middle East, in Egypt and in Israel. Upon retirement from the forces, she established Colwell and Associates Limited and completed a number of private and public sector contracts related to governance, strategic review, business planning, and change management. She has served as a volunteer executive director for Christian counseling in Ottawa since 2011. She is a longtime Salvationist. She serves as the Corps Sergeant Major and a senior deacon at Ottawa Citadel, a Church of the Salvation Army in Ottawa. Linda holds a Bachelor of Science from Mount Allison University and a Master's of Business Administration from the University of Western Ontario. She is an officer of the Order of Military Merit and was invested as a Dame of the Order of St. George in September 2018. She is originally a down-homer from New Brunswick, but I guess after more than 20 years in the city, she now calls Ottawa her home. So Linda, I'm going to open up the floor to you, and we welcome you to the Rotary Club of Westmount.
Well, thank you for that introduction. And let me begin by saying what a pleasure it is to be with you today, even though it is through technology. I didn't get a chance to see your beautiful city, but I see your smiling faces, and that's almost as good. Glenn asked me to speak to you today on the importance of the military in the Canadian society, life and society. And as I thought about the subject, I began to think, you know, I think even on this day of remembrance, there are probably many people in Canada who think that the military in Canada is not important, and they may even think that it's irrelevant. Obviously, that's not my view, and I hope that by the fact that you invited me to speak on the subject, you're of a like mind. It's always nice to have a friendly audience. So while most people would not think of Canada as a military society, the military has really been part of the very fabric of our country since long before anyone ever dreamed what Canada would become. In fact, we owe our very existence to military and paramilitary forces that actually founded and protected our early settlements. There were soldiers with Samuel de Champlain when he arrived in Quebec in 1608, and Champlain himself, among other things, was a soldier. As the early French settlers faced threats from the Iroquois and the British, the New France actually became a military society. It's hard to believe in what we call Quebec today, but it was a military society in the fact that in the 1650s, every male between the ages of 16 and 60 was required to join a militia unit, to undergo training, and to be ready to serve no matter what the threat. So the defense of New France was actually in the hands of a few French regular army members and troops, a tiny French navy, and local militia units with their indigenous allies. Now, the group was made stronger by the fact that many of the regular army troops and officers stayed in Canada once their service with the French forces was completed. Now, another example of the major military influence in Canada comes from the founding of Halifax. The city was established in 1749 by Edward Cornwallis, and he had just over 2,000 settlers who came with him. And Halifax was established, of course, to offset the French stronghold at Louisbourg in Cape Breton. Now, Cornwallis is now the subject, or the target, I should say, of some revisionist historians, but he was actually very important to the founding, not just of Halifax, but some of the very important things that have happened in good governance. He was a career military officer. He reached the rank of lieutenant general and then turned his military skills to governing in the province of Nova Scotia, which was then a colony, and to other British colonies. It was Cornwallis administration actually that implemented the first constitution in a Canadian colony right in Nova Scotia. And while he returned to Great Britain, many of his soldiers, like their French counterparts, stayed on after terminating their military service. Large numbers of would-be Canadian settlers came to Quebec and Ontario and the Maritimes in 1783 as loyalists. And of course, the loyalists, many served in the British Army during the American Revolution. And then there was another large settlement following the War of 1812. And that saw disbanded soldiers taking up lands throughout Southern Ontario and Quebec. Now, Canada's importance on the world stage has been shaped by its military. Since the Korean War, 175,000 Canadian military members have participated in peacekeeping and peace support operations in almost every country of the world. About 1,800 have lost their lives in the service of peace or peace support. Canada is recognized around the world because of the quality of its troops and their impact on maintaining or establishing an element of peace and security. 26,000 Canadians served in the Korean War. 516 of them died in what was the third largest conflict in Canadian history. I should say the third deadliest conflict. As part of the first ever UN operation, Canada's military distinguished themselves as individuals and as units and brought great credit to Canada as a result of that war. In excess of 1 million Canadians and Newfoundlanders served in the Second World War. Of those, 45,000 lost their lives and another 55,000 were wounded. Canadians served with distinction, and to this day, 75 years after the end of the Second World War, are celebrated as liberators and just great people in every theater in which they served. The military's distinguished service, backed up by a strong diplomatic corps, led to Canada being a charter member of the UN. Now, more than 650,000 Canadians and Newfoundland men and women served in the First World War. You know, that's more than 8% of the entire 8 million population that existed at that time. Of the group that served, over 66,000 lost their lives, and another 172,000 were wounded, at least wounded by visual wounds. The Canadian Expeditionary Force, or the CEF, as it was called, was referred to as the best little army in the world. Their reputation, both as intelligent and darn good fighters, led to Canada, which entered the war as a colony, at the end of the war, being a signatory on the armistice. Let's turn to some of the other things that caused me to say that Canada is of great importance in the society and in our contributions to life in general. And the first is that modern nursing came into effect through the efforts of Florence Nightingale during the Crimean War. Now, anyone who has spent any time in a hospital or another care facility will know the importance of good nursing. And many medical advances that we enjoy today, many of them we just take for granted, came about because of the need to support the military. In 1537, in response to it was actually during the siege of Terrain, the French barber and surgeon, and yes, barbers were surgeons or surgeons were barbers, he became appalled at the loss of life because soldiers simply bled to death. Now, while the Romans had used belts and ropes to control bleeding, it seems that these tactics had fallen out of favor for several centuries. So Paré reintroduced the use of ligatures and tourniquet to control and stop bleeding. Now, today we have all kinds of ligatures and tourniquet, both sophisticated and pretty simple ones, that allow surgeons and other kinds of doctors and emergency workers to perform life-saving surgeries and manage bleeding until people can get to proper medical care. While stopping bleeding is attributed to Paré, huge advancements in starting or restoring the flow of blood so that limbs and lives could be saved came about because of the work of vascular and emergency surgeons right at the front during the Korean War. Large-scale infection control came about with the use of antiseptics during the First World War and continued into the Second. And the need to stop infections during the Second World War brought about the first mass production of penicillin and sulfa drugs. Advancements in plastic surgery began during the American Civil War, continued through the First World War and into the Second War and beyond, into the conflicts that we've experienced since, so that today whole faces and mangled limbs can be restored. Individuals who would have at one time been consigned to back rooms and care facilities can now live happy and productive lives. Rehabilitation programs were designed initially to help injured soldiers, and today they continue to develop so that all citizens can get help in getting their lives back together after injuries, strokes, heart attacks, and other catastrophic events. Many transportation advancements have come to us thanks to the need to support military operations. Modern trucks were born during the First World War in response to the need to move things. And ambulance services came into being during the First World War in response to the need to move wounded military. Also, rapid development of aircraft came about to help the military to go faster, further, and with heavier loads. On the social side, local armories manned by the militia were usually the community's social center, the center of entertainment, as they hosted balls, band concerts, and other kinds of fun days. And the military was always the feature of a local parade. And in the early days, and perhaps not so long ago, young ladies swooned as they watched potential husbands, these handsome young men in uniforms, marching, participating in the dances that were held, or participating in military displays. Well, let's turn to the economy. The military contributes to the economy in two ways. And the first is that various military establishments bring great spending power and local jobs to the areas where they're located. Oromocto, New Brunswick was constructed. It was developed specifically to support the men and women who served at Base Gagetown. Other local towns like Valcartier, Pembroke, Winnipeg, and Edmonton really appreciate the spending power of their soldiers. The Navy continues to be a major player in Halifax and in Esquimalt, and the Air Force in Bagotville, Trenton, Winnipeg, and Cold Lake provides lots of local business income and non-military jobs. The defense industry is sometimes ignored, but it's important in our national economy. The defense and security industries focus on the fabrication of aircraft, armored cars, armored vehicles, naval ships, simulators, information and communications equipment and technology, in shelters, in advanced textiles, satellites, space technologies, and of course, good old-fashioned ammunition. Here are some statistics. The defense industry contributes $7 billion annually to the GDP. It produces annual sales of $10.7 billion. 54% of that is exports. And it employs 64,000 Canadians across the country. It also invests in R&D. When Canadians are in trouble, the military is there. Whether it's floods on the Red, the Ottawa, the Saguenay, or the St. John rivers, Canada's military has been there to help their friends, their neighbors, and total strangers as they work to save lives and protect property, to control the water, and to help with the cleanup. Sailors, soldiers, airmen, and women have been there to help their fellow Canadians, whether it's fighting forest fires, dealing with power outages, burrowing through snowmageddons, or dealing with the latest problems of the COVID devastation that came about in long-term care facilities in Quebec and Ontario. Finally, the military is important to Canada because of its people. And thanks to the Canadian Armed Forces, we see support for hundreds, maybe thousands of young Canadians who take part in the finest youth development programs in Canada, namely the Royal Canadian Navy, Army, and Air Cadets, and the Junior Rangers. And if any of you have not met a cadet, I would recommend that you find the next one that's selling apples or whatever it is that they do to raise money. These young people are for sure the influencers and the leaders of tomorrow. Today, we have 71,000 regular force members and 30,000 reservists in Canada. While the total of 100,000 in a country of now almost 39 million is not much, if we look at those numbers in another way, they are quite significant. You see, to maintain 100,000 regular and reserve members, the Canadian Armed Forces recruits more than 15,000 people a year. The throughput over time means that 15,000 trained and educated leaders join the Canadian civilian workforce each year. These individuals take up employment in plumbing, electrical, HVAC, and high-tech companies. They join our major banks, and they join every level of employment in aviation, construction, and defense industry companies. They become pastors, civilian doctors, dentists, and lawyers. They lead hospitals, police forces. They look after emergency preparedness, and they look after security organizations. They fill the ranks of the public service, and some of them become diplomats and politicians. Building on that latter point, the diplomats and politicians, let me tell you a little bit about how there has been an impact on the diplomatic and political stage. First, 3 governors general stand out as examples. Field Marshal Julian Byng, though not a Canadian, led the Canadian Expeditionary Force at Vimy Ridge. He later became Viscount Byng of Vimy and served as the 12th Governor General of Canada. Unfortunately, he is probably best remembered for the constitutional crisis that he created when in 1926, he refused William Lyon Mackenzie King's request to dissolve Parliament and call an election. In spite of the crisis that he created, the old military leader's questionable decision was a catalyst that brought about widespread and very positive changes in the role of the Crown in Canada and other British dominions at the time. A second Governor General, the Right Honorable Lieutenant Colonel Vincent Massey, served with the Queen's Own Rifles here in Canada. He was a professor, a politician, a diplomat, and a respected leader. He became the 18th Governor General of Canada and the first to be born in Canada. Major General Georges P. Vanier was the 19th Governor General of Canada. Now, he was a decorated war hero, having served with the Canadian Expeditionary Force in Europe and during the Second World War here in Canada. Outside of his military career, he was an accomplished diplomat. As the first French-speaking Canadian-born Governor General, he was very popular, particularly in English Canada, engendering great respect with military throughout most of the country. Now, no talk on the importance of the military would be complete without saying something about that relationship of the military and politicians. And many will know that the current leader of the opposition is a retired Air Force officer. That's Air Force, that's the good one. And many other retired military serve as MPs today or in the provincial and municipal levels of government. Of the 23 Canadian prime ministers, 7 can claim service with the Canadian military. John A. Macdonald saw active service as a private in Kingston during the Upper Canada Rebellion. Alexander Mackenzie served in the militia and reached the rank of major. John Abbott reached the rank of lieutenant colonel while serving with the militia in Montreal. Mackenzie Bowl was a lieutenant colonel who saw active duty on the Canadian border during the American Revolution, or pardon me, the American Civil War. John Diefenbaker served as a lieutenant with the Canadian Expeditionary Force, and Lester Pearson was a lieutenant with the CEF serving in Greece and Egypt, initially with the Medical Corps, and then as a pilot with the Royal Flying Corps. And finally, Pierre Trudeau. Yes, Pierre Trudeau served as an officer cadet in the Canadian Officer Training Corps. So there you have it. The military has been an important part of Canadian life and society since before Canada existed. Soldiers were part of the various groups that settled, that protected the lands, and when they left the service, continued to develop the land. Canada's military has played a role in establishing and maintaining our presence on the world stage, and military needs drove developments in medicine, transportation, and logistics. The armed forces continues to contribute to our economic development, and as a group, the armed forces is the largest training, education, and leadership development institution in Canada. The military contributed to the development of at least 3 great governors general and 7 of our prime ministers, and they continue to contribute to countless, the development of countless other politicians at every level of government. So, is the military important in Canada's life and society? Well, I'd say it's more than just important. It's actually essential to who we are today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Linda. I've just sent out a little message to everybody asking if they have questions. Plus, if anybody does have a question, you can unmute yourself and just bite or jump right in here. Susan is asking, Linda, in which countries have you served?
Well, obviously Canada. I have spent a good deal of time in the United States, but actually was not posted there. And I served with in Egypt and Israel. I never got to serve in Europe.
Just as well. Given the situation, the global situation today, I know Canada is always being asked to up its contribution to NATO and its military spending to bring it up to 2% of GDP. We know that we're going to have issues probably on our northern shores in the Arctic. What are the challenges for the forces in the next 10, 20 years? That's a mean question.
It's a big one, yeah. I think our challenges are always the same. We have a country and a government chosen by the people of that country that consistently wants a full premium level fire insurance policy and really can't afford to pay for it. I believe as the Northwest Passage opens, the Navy is going to have to be capable of and ready to focus more on that northern coastline. The air elements will need to continue to patrol because you can do so much more territory from the air. But we can never forget that the Army and its boots on the ground that provide food, that provide protection to the people who are actually in a problem.
Thank you. Anybody else want to pop in here?
I'd just like, it's Glenn here. I'd like to ask you a question, thinking of particularly of the Northern Passage and the concerns about the environment and environmental protection, as much as we don't think of the military having a role in that, but it is a concern. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Actually, the military, the Navy particularly, and the Air Force, as they're doing reconnaissance and patrolling in the north on all our coasts, are always looking for environmental problems as well as fisheries control. So those are when a ship sets sail, it's not just exercising its guns or anything like that. It's actually on patrol to protect Canada's resources and to be on the lookout for environmental issues. And we hope that the new class of naval ships will be a lot more environmentally friendly themselves.
Yeah, thanks.
I saw Dowdy looking for a question.
Yeah, can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. My question is, Canada is the second largest country in the world, but the total military is probably not as big as the geography would demand. So my question is, would it not be appropriate if Canada as a nation expanded the size of the military to closer match with the geographical area that it covers?
As a former military person, I would love that to happen. It's very expensive to maintain the military, and frankly, in 39 million seems like a lot of people, but in the geography that we have, even our population is nowhere near enough to actually protect our borders and do the things that we need to do. The military is spread pretty thin, and I do believe that we will need to have a lot more focus on, yes, maintaining a regular force, that solid core of what we call professional soldiers, but we need more reservists that, although they may not be serving all the time, that they are trained and can be called on in emergencies. So we just have to balance the expenditures between the regular and the reserve, so we have enough professional soldiers that we can work with our, I won't call them amateur soldiers, but our non-professional soldiers as we move to try to protect this huge country.
That kind of suggests or promotes the idea that Canada needs more and more immigration. We need more people to come in here, not only to build the economy, but to protect our geographical area.
Yes, and they can protect the geographical area just by living in it.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Very correctly said. Thank you.
Very interesting presentation, Linda, and I very much appreciate it on a Remembrance Day. I come from a military family background going back several hundred years, including a loyalist connection. So very interesting, and thank you for it.
Rod DeCourcy.
Yeah, it's John Donovan here. I have a question. I have a stepdaughter who is a major in the Canadian Forces. She also served for 9 months in Afghanistan. I'm wondering, it's partly the obvious question, but what do you see as the role of women in the military?
Well, actually, the military has been, and I should have said something about that, but the military has been an equal opportunity employer long before most people even knew what that was. And I think the military is growing, the women in the military are growing in numbers and in quality. Just because with more numbers, once you get that critical mass, it is a lot easier to look at the, to be within the organization, to lead within the organization. And I really think that just from the population, the kind of population we have today, that we're not going to have to be much longer saying, oh, you need to take women in the military, because women will just need to join the military in order to keep the numbers up. And as more women join, they grow in the leadership and they will come to the higher levels. I mean, today there was some talk of one of our female general officers potentially even taking over as the chief of defense staff. I think she might shelf life before she can do that, but this is not the last chance.
Thank you.
David Franklin, would you be kind enough to step in and thank Linda for us?
Linda, thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Linda, thank you so much for your informative and fascinating review of the role of the Canadian Armed Forces, not only in world conflicts, but their contribution to Canadian society. I live in Montreal West, and on many homes, there are placards with pictures of those people that were killed in action in World War II. It's a constant reminder of their ultimate sacrifice to protect us. At the beginning of today's meeting was a repetition of In Flanders Fields. This was written by Lieutenant Colonel John McCrae, and he wrote it because of a friend of his was died in action. All of your presentation, the placards in Montreal West and others remind us of this day, Remembrance Day. We remember John McCrae, we remember all those young men and women who paid the ultimate sacrifice to save our democracy and live in freedom as we do now. We've contributed to this Remembrance Day in a very significant way. We appreciate your involvement and your fine work that you have done. We hope to hear from you soon again. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
Linda, normally when we meet in person, we have this spiffy little certificate that we hand out and let you take home to hang on your wall or press in a book. We can't do that, obviously, but what we will be doing is Glenn will follow up with you.
No, the waste paper
If he
basket.
hasn't already, and
Okay, never mind.
get your home address. We'll be sending you a